welcome to Burning Bridges with Bridgeburner, the podcast about level design. And today I've got a very special guest. Particularly excited about this one. We've got JunctionEight, Jason O'Connell, formerly of ID Software, lead level designer, a man who knows his stuff. How's it going?
Actually, principal level designer.
Principal,
not
okay.
lead.
Is there a technical difference there?
There's a bunch of titles, but in the end, I made levels.
You made levels, very good.
That's really all that matters.
Yeah, that's what we're here to talk about. So, you were with ID for, 13 years, I think? Which is a long time with any company.
2008, I think, is when I started.
That's a hell of a
stint. The name JunctionEight, that's where that came from. Actually.
There you go. A little bit of trivia there.
It was more of it was like, I had my kid, and then I got the job at ID, and it was a junction, right? In my life, it was the path was changing, and so just kind of marked it right then.
Oh, that's really cool. It's been a bit of a watershed moment, it sounds like, 2008, because that would have been a time of chaos with the credit crunch and all the shit that was going on with that, and that's really cool. It sounds like it was a good turning point, and you turned it into something positive for sure. So you've obviously got quite a catalogue of games you've worked on professionally. Prey, Rage, Doom, all the way up to Doom 16 and Doom Eternal. So I think we'll start off with looking at probably the thing that people know the most, and that is Doom Eternal and Doom 2016. Two games that really, I think, revitalized the single player shooter experience, not just as a Doom fan, but just as a gamer. Arena shooters, battle royales are big now. The single player experience feels like it's taken a little bit of a backward step in the market. What was it like just being in that industry at that time, seeing the success of these games as they kind of blew the world away?
It was crazy, man. The leading up to the launch of 2016 was scary because you had no idea what it was. I mean, it was just, I think we were all very proud of it. But it was scary leading in because the community and everything else. It's just like you're coming into something that people absolutely love and cherish,
and defend quite angrily sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So it was terrifying to come in, but at least the result felt like it was a very proud moment. I think, just to be able to have been part of that and to be. I mean, hell, I wanted to work at ID since I started, in making levels back in the day. So just to be part of that company, and especially when I got there in 2008, there was still a lot of the original guys left. I mean, Carmack was still there and all that kind of stuff. So I did get this opportunity to be able to see those guys in action, which was crazy.
Oh, that would have been awesome. I didn't realize they still had some of the OG boys still at the company at that point. Yeah,
it was awesome. And,
actually,
and then just...
What's that? No, sorry, I was just thinking, actually, I remember seeing their names in the credits for Doom 3, so they wouldn't have been too far away at 2008. Because I remember with Doom 16, just playing it and that opening scene where you pop out of the coffin and just that build up to the title card, and just when the Doom came on the screen and the music comes up, and it's just like, it just felt perfect, for someone who's been playing classic Doom for a long time. Just having it just feel like it just ticked that box. It's like, this feels like home. It was a hell of an experience. So I think one of the things that really stood out to me with Doom 16, and we can contrast this with Doom Eternal from a more level design focused perspective, is Doom 16 has quite a non-linear level design. There's quite open layouts, lots of intertwined areas, like something like the Foundry. You could play that in a myriad of different ways. There's lots of paths you can take. And then something like Doom Eternal's always felt like when you broke it down was a straight line in terms of your gameplay progression. With Doom 16, was that a conscious decision to keep it open plan like that, or was it just something that naturally kind of occurred?
I think it just kind of naturally occurred. I mean, there were some of those, like you mentioned Foundry as an example. It wasn't always that way. It was more linear, and you did get guided through it a lot more, and it was more of just a choice at the end and an experiment to see if you could just open up the entire level and let you choose where you wanted to go. thankfully it worked out pretty well. And I think Hugo had the idea coming up with the all the gore nest stuff. Just think of it as objectives and things like that. Like Hugo just slap in a nest full of God knows what it is with a portal, pull it, and initiate the fight.
Yeah, because that gives it because I think good non-linear level design is quite hard to pull off, and like with a map like the Foundry, it wasn't just about the key door, to get into that turbine area, but like with those gore nests, it gave you your objectives, gave you your purpose, and that's I think that's really important in a map of that kind of design. Is like the player, they can meander around and explore and take their time, but if for people who want to just kind of play the game, you're giving them really clear go here, go here, go here, and you can do that in any order. And I think the way that map was linked together, it was very easy to make your way between those kind of 4 key zones. I think some of the vertical climbs were a little bit tricky. Like there's that lower gore nest in the pit. That one was like, where do I go now?
But a lot of that too is like once you get those, since that was done at such a late stage on that map, to give it those kind of that open feel, to try to retrofit something into there, because you can't really change much at that point. Like, all the geometry is there. The artists have already done their passes. Like everything is there. So now try to put gameplay in a different way than it was intended. It takes time, a lot of time.
Because that's that process. I've gone through that in a few, like trying to change your design idea. Like, I want to do this now. Can I cram it in? Can I shoehorn this concept in with the minimum amount of rework? And it's bad enough in like something like a Doom builder where you can actually change things relatively easily. But where you've got a model based game with like dedicated teams to each workflow. With those, that process is important to follow. You block out and you do your combat tests, and then you start your detail passes, and then you do your fun. You can't. If you start moving stuff, you're going to have to redo that whole process.
You break a lot of shit. There's significant work that needs to be done by then a lot of people if you just shift one thing. And you wouldn't think it would be that crazy, but it definitely can have a trickling effect down the line.
And it can create like unforeseen bugs and skips and stuff, and so you have to test it really thoroughly. Okay, especially if you're going from a more contained layout to something open, you start cutting. I'm guessing you just started cutting holes in walls and opening things up, and like, well, where can you get to from here? I don't know. We'll find out. Right. But again, going back to that isolate, like the 4 gore nest concept, like it almost doesn't matter too much if you can kind of jump around in weird ways, because your objectives are isolated, kind of almost arenas that you just kind of bottled up, and once you're in there and pulled the cord, you're in there for the fight. So. What's your favourite level from Doom 2016?
That is a good question. As far as one that I worked on, I would say it would have to be like the internal name is stuck in my head. It was called Bloodkeep A, but it was Candiger Sanctum, I think is what it's called.
Candiger Sanctum. Yeah, that's the first hell map I think that you go to.
Yeah. I think that's the probably the one that I had the most fun working on. It's probably also the one that I spent the most time on. Good, I think. But outside of stuff that I actually worked on, I love the surface stuff. I know you go there a couple times, which is just kind of running around on the outskirts of the facility. Well, there's a few like resource ops I do like. I have a thing for those like the hard surface interior sci-fi kind of stuff. Like I love that shit.
Yeah.
It's a good blend of like Doom 3-ish kind of looking. Like I just love the look of those games. So I tend to lean towards maps that have more of that feel.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the good things about Doom 16 was there was a variety of map styles, and depending on what your where your leanings were, whether you like those big open vistas, exterior over a compound and trying to find your way into it, or if it's the tight interior, as you say, sci-fi design, and then you get into the hell maps, and then things start blending together later on and getting a bit more techie as well, with like the Vega bases. There's a good mix there, and I think for me, Necropolis was always one that really stood out. I think partly because of the music, like that's got the best music track I reckon in the game, and this is a game with very good music. Like this double kick rhythms just always blew me away on that one. But yeah, I think there's a really good amount of good variety in Doom 16 in terms of its design concepts. Whereas we'll jump over to Doom Eternal now. For me, Doom Eternal's always felt, like I said, a lot more linear in its progression pathing. You move from point A to point B to point C to point D. You get maps like Super Gorness, which appear very non-linear and very nicely layered and interwoven, but at the end of the day, it's still a linear path through the map for the most part. Was that a conscious move? And I'd imagine it was possibly due to the complexity of Doom Eternal.
You could tell that there was definitely like the maps that were started first were the maps in the middle of the game. It's it's that whole second chunk, the second act. So you've got Mars Core, Super Gore Nest,
Art Complex.
Art Complex. It's so funny because those names, like, I'm so used to the internal names of the maps. It's hard for me to remember what they're actually called.
This map was called I Romero 420.
But those maps, they take a long time, but you can see it in all three of those maps that there was, I mean, they're huge. And
I was going to say they're probably the most ambitious.
And they did intertwine a lot, and they can be maze-like, but then it's still, like you said, it's a linear path through there. It just gives the impression that it's something that's maybe a little bit more maze-like. But I mean, it was definitely a decision. I mean, Hugo wanted to go more of a directed approach, and a lot because he was telling a story on top of everything else, and it just suits that type of game better. And it was less about level design and a lot more about the combat encounters and stuff, because a lot of effort is put into those combat encounters. So those were just front and center. Like that's where all the money's gone.
Very much so.
It's like the level's almost taking a backseat to showcase the combat.
Yeah, and I'd say Doom 16 was kind of the opposite. Like the levels were more front and center in the combat. It wasn't an afterthought, but the fights were a lot easier. They weren't quite as technically set up, and it's like, we'll populate this area with a few demons, and it'll be fun. But it felt like the design wasn't centered so much around we're going to build this kind of fight. Whereas Doom Eternal, it's like this arena, we've got a specific combat encounter that we want to set up. We'll set that up, and then we'll build the levels around those concepts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because and I think that you look at the difficulty bump from 16 to Eternal, which is significant, and that shows in that as well. And I think I actually think it was a really good call, despite everyone's I think there's a little bit of salt in the first playthroughs for a lot of people. It's like, a hard game? What? Where did this come from? Ammo? I have to manage it? Fuck. But I mean, it gave it longevity, and I mean, you get people playing it over again, and there was a combat loop to learn, and it is probably one of the most engaging FPS games, single player experience that I recently replayed Nightmare a couple months ago after going to the expansion packs, and we could talk about them a bit later, but going back to the base game and going, actually, this is pretty top tier from an enjoyment perspective. So I think it was interesting you say how that you started at the middle chunk of the maps that seemed to there, and I think, and I always said like they always felt like some of the more ambitious concepts. Mars Core's all scattered around, in space, and lots of platforming, and then you got Art Complex, which is a really cool city map. Really, really well. I don't like city maps normally. I think they're very hard to make good, but it's a really fun map. That fight in the restaurant is probably the best fight in Doom Eternal, I reckon. And then Super Gorness, everyone remembers that great visual presentation with the big gateway, and they're clear, like trying to figure out how to get inside to blow it up. So from a story perspective, those three also have very strong elements there. Was there a decision, or was it just kind of the natural? I think development cycle thing where you start off big with what you're making, big ideas, big ambition, lots of energy, and then taper off to slightly smaller concepts later on, or
Yeah, I mean a little bit. I think it's more that since those were the first ones, you're experimenting and trying to feel out what the game is. you're trying things just that you didn't do in 2016. You know, you're expanding everything. I mean, they were art tests. They were everything. They were the prototype maps essentially, and so they have a lot of Doom 2016's blood in them. But then they have all of the Eternal stuff kind of built on top, and then you have the first chunk of the game and the last chunk of the game. Those are made later once you've kind of identified what the game is.
Kind of built the DNA at that point.
Pretty much, yeah.
No, I think that's really interesting. I think that's quite a cool idea, and like it's interesting. Like you compare to some other games, and say more indie things like Dusk and the Medieval, and that you can tell which levels were made first, just because people were learning, and there's skills that you develop as you go through. You can't pick that up in Doom Eternal, obviously because its software is full of professionals, and or theoretically. But because they're an established studio and they know the process, they can start off the first maps that are made, arguably some of people's favourites, which I think is quite interesting. Normally you'd find that it's the stuff made at the end, whereas everything's very polished, and the workflows are established, and there's people have gotten better at their craft. It's kind of the opposite there with Doom Eternal.
Well, and the game was a lot bigger too, actually. So that middle of the game it's coming from the guys that worked on 2016, and it's everyone who really put a lot of time into 2016. And then as you hire new people on and more people transitioned to, like, there were some art guys that came over to become level designers and stuff like that. So as they're training up, then they're on the other chunks of the game.
Right. So there is some personnel shifting between teams.
A little bit, yeah. There's a few world builders, environment artists that were really focused on design, and they would work on. There's one guy, Nick Dungbeck. He's awesome. He worked on Foundry a lot when I was working on that on 2016, and he would just come up with just random gameplay ideas. And is that cool? And you're like, yeah,
hell yeah, it is. Yeah,
like,
come and make that. Yeah,
I want to break the catwalk here. You're like, sweet,
yeah,
sounds good. Like, I'm down. So he came over and he did Cultist Base.
Ooh, that is
and things like that. Yeah,
so he's the mean one. He's the mean one.
Yeah. He's studied so much on just like classic shooters and classic Doom stuff just for traps and anything he could try to like sneak in there. He did. Like he's amazing.
Because I think it's like listening to people who are very, very good at Doom Eternal, people like your Devas and your Spud Hunters and your Rhythmias and whatnot. Cultist Base was like, that is the difficulty spike. Where the middle meets the road and the men are separated from the boys, blah blah blah.
Right.
And I think it is a very, very technical, very intense, and you're kind of low powered. It's certainly at the beginning in terms of your arsenals. And it's interesting that it's someone who came in from an art team to go, I can make maps, and they come out with that. It's like a defining certainly one of the most memorable experiences. Because
he's the boss.
Did you work on Doom Hunter Base?
I did not. That was man, why am I blanking there? Lewis. I can't even think of his last name. Yeah, I'm old. My mind's failing me. But it was Lewis, and then combat stuff and gameplay was Adam Badeau.
Because I think
we worked on that together.
Especially on my second play, or my replay that I did recently. That one stood out as a perfect blending of story, visual build-up, gameplay, and then a big finish. And you play through and you slowly watch the Doom Hunter get built. The music's great, and there's this really oppressive, like almost gothic, but also still quite sci-fi cathedral to this entity, and it takes you to the first proper boss fight. That one I think is probably my favourite map in the set now. After that playthrough,
awesome.
Yeah,
it's funny. There is going into Eternal, there was the talk of the boss maps and stuff like that, and the idea is that they would be short maps. Get you to the boss and then over and done with. So you can kind of see that when you fight the gladiator.
Yes, correct.
Boss, because that's just kind of straightforward. Get some story chunks, get to the boss, fight him, But then the other maps, like Doom Hunter's a good example. It's like, no, that just evolved into an entire level just because it was too damn cool.
It's like, just keep going. It's too much fun. I think it's good having the differences there. Like this, the gladiator is very much like you're here to fight the gladiator. He's there waiting for you. You just, do this little journey, and like you said, there's a few story chunks to, still appropriately build up the atmosphere. And it feels like a very, personal encounter, I think. Whereas Doom Hunter is like there's all sorts of other machinations around it. There's the Hell Priest doing the voiceovers, and you know this is just a step on the journey. And there's more to come after that. And there's more antagonists to go hunt down. And I do like the contrast between the two. You've been doing this professionally for a long time. We'll just go back a little bit to before that. And you were saying that you kind of had a dream for working for a long time, and you mentioned on the in the stream yesterday, using old editors and stuff. And where did your level design journey start?
Now I'm going to be really old. I mean, even just wanting to, starting at the very beginning and wanting to make games, it would have been, the only computer we had in my house growing up initially was a Mac, and it was the worst Mac ever. I couldn't play anything. And so, Myst was, the first game that I really got to focus on, and then kind of experience, world building in a sense. It actually felt like a place. And, the best I could do to and it also had it had a making of movie on the disc. So watching that, I would just watch it all the time, and I still do, which is funny. It's
have to hunt that down.
I'm all about nostalgia with that kind of shit. Is that it just psyched me of holy shit, you can make games. This is crazy. Look what these guys did.
Wow. I can make games.
Yeah, it's awesome. They have pads of paper and they're just drawing maps and figuring out puzzles. I could do that. So I would just sit there and whatever program was on the Mac at the time, pretty much like the variant of Paint. I would draw maps and stuff, and nothing ever came from that. But once I got a PC, which was mind blowing, started getting into I would go to the library in our town. Always had those classic old Doom books. They had the disc in the back with all the your tools.
That's awesome.
And all that stuff. I actually still have one sitting over here. I'll never get rid of these. Yeah, these beasts.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Those. These massive.
That is a weighty tome. That's awesome.
And they all, and they had just textures and just, they pretty much just raided the internet at the time and just slapped them on a disc.
That's great. That's fantastic.
But that opened up the world of at least making a level and figuring out that you could change the art and just experiment with that kind of stuff. But then what really grabbed me outside of, I wasn't that focused on Doom. It was Duke 3D. The build engine stuff was right at the top. And I love the interaction you could do with stuff. You could, the fact that you were turning lights on and off and you could make, the rooms change shade and shit was just stunning to me back then.
What's interesting, Doom, obviously there was, Wolfenstein before that, Doom was kind of the first one that grew as a moddable game in a big way, but then you Quake and your Dukes and these other, more advanced engines. And then Doom would just slowly pinch things to improve theirs. From the the modding community, we're poly objects in Hexen. We might grab those. And interactable objects. We put in some code here, and I think there's a bit of pirating going on there. Piracy,
definitely.
Yeah.
And then I think from build, I don't think I ever did anything in Quake. I think I stayed with build all during the Quake era, and but Quake 2, it's once it was colored lights, it was oh my god, look what we could do now. And then so I kind of bounced between Quake 2 and then Unreal, and I was heavy into Unreal a lot, just making a bunch of shit. And that's kind of where, actually before that, I started doing contract jobs while I was in high school.
Okay.
Like, because back then it was just everyone's on IRC and chatting and all the different, like Shadow Warrior groups and Duke 3D groups and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of just people coming in and hiring level designers for, $500, make a level for this thing. Pretty much all of those expansions never saw the light of day. You made levels, you got paid for them, they went off, and it's like, oh, well, I mean, shit, being in high school and getting that kind of money.
Exactly, it's great. And getting paid to do something you enjoy. It's like, fuck yeah. I don't care if it gets released. Yeah.
I think the one that got the closest there was one for Shadow Warrior called Deadly Kiss. And you played I think it was Lo Wang's sister or something like that, and her name was No Wang. It was all, yeah.
I cannot even. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And that one was close. That one was really close. I think I did some blood levels as well.
Ooh, I just played blood
for some blood expansion, but that never saw the light of day either.
Blood's great. That's definitely my favorite.
Quake 2, I did a few levels for something, I think it was like Battlecruiser 3000 AD. Back then, it was just, I mean, and I never played those games.
Right.
But
you still made maps for them.
Some guy was hiring for that game because it was going to be like you could get on board a ship. Like if you captured a ship, you could get on board, and then it would load up pretty much Quake 2 engine map of that ship, and then you could explore the ship, and then go back to playing Battlecruiser.
I can build a ship.
Yeah, I did a few of those. I don't think that ever came out either. It's just like all this sadness of like all these things that I wish I still had so I could see them.
Well, it's kind of I don't. It's kind of
exist.
I think you'll find that any passionate whether it's making stuff for another game, in terms of like just free content, or if it's a professional like yourself, like that story is told 1,000 times. Like you look at my hard drive and it's full of unreleased stuff. I'm just lucky that I managed to keep it all. Like over 15 years of dabbling, and there's all this fun stuff that I really enjoyed making. And it was the act of making it was the joy. It wasn't so much as like I wanted to release this thing, and there was always an intention there. But I think. Even better because you got paid for it. But I think like just making stuff for the pure act of making it, like getting into that habit and that mindset, is a really good thing, because it means that you'll keep doing it because you just really enjoy the making of the map, and it's not the accolades and the reception and the feedback that keeps you going. It's just that intrinsic motivation, and you've turned it into so a very successful career. So
I wish. There was America Online that was like, all my family had for my internet access. But they had, there was like you put in like keyword 3D Realms or something like that, and it would take you to like the Duke 3D portal or whatever, and you could upload your maps to that, and you would see like the download count next to it. And that was always like the thing of like how many people they're playing your maps. Yeah. And it's like, man, I have scoured the internet trying to find if anybody ever archived those maps from that like database. I can't find shit, which sucks, because I would love to go back and find some of those things.
Well, it's like and this goes back to why I think Doom is probably the strongest of the classic game communities. Is that archive exists? ID Games has stuff from 1994.
Right.
If it was uploaded there, it's still there, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, they're not good. Actually, no. There are some classics. There's stuff definitely worth playing from back then, but it is a different world, that's for sure.
It is a fun time to get pretty much sloshed, drink a bunch of beers, and just load up one of those like old WAD discs and start play.
Yeah.
They are amazing. Like there's some of those maps. It's stunning. But it's a good time.
Yeah, stunning, but not necessarily in a positive way. It's just very interesting decisions have been made.
But it's amazing because you can just read all the text files that come with them, and they have these deep stories. So it's just like, this is what's happening. You're like, man, that sounds fucking awesome.
You go, and it's just a square room.
You load it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to use my imagination for this one. Yeah. So, what was your favorite engine to work with out of those kind of like preliminary? Was there one that really grabbed you, or you enjoy bouncing? I mean, you said you worked with Build a lot, but was there one that like in particular you just thought was a lot of fun?
I think Build. Build was a lot. It was fun. Making stuff with Unreal, like I don't think I ever really enjoyed.
I've heard that it's a bit of a bitch to work with. You can make some impressive stuff.
It was different back then. I mean, and I haven't used the newer stuff, but clearly, like every game fucking uses it, so it must be fantastic. But the old stuff, it's like, I definitely didn't stay making Unreal maps for a long time. The first few projects, I think, like when I was at Human Head, the first game was in Unreal. But that was like the amazingness of as Unreal was transitioning into. Now you have terrain and all this cool shit. So that was fun to work with. But definitely, I think I would always go back to build for the classic stuff.
Did you ever work on like Quake 4? Or was that before your time at ID?
That was before. I think I was at Human Head when Quake 4 was being developed. So I probably would have been working on Prey. Because it depends on when Quake 4 came out, but
right.
I don't think I was. Yeah, I had to have been at Human Head.
Because Prey's the same engine, isn't it?
Yes,
it's Tech 4, Tech 3.
Yep, Tech 4.
Yeah. So this was definitely something I was keen to talk to you about was Prey because it's a hard game to find these days, and I'm assuming there's some legal copyright reason for that. But I was gifted it from a friend, and I've played through about half of it now, and seriously blown away. It is an incredible game. How did Prey start? How did the concept start? Because there's a lot of really like out there design in that game, both in terms of visuals and just the way the mechanics. Like, where did Prey begin?
So when I started at Human Head, I was on the Western project they had, Dead Man's Hand. So they already had Prey going at that point. But I mean, Prey already had a history because it was at 3D Realms from like the late 90s.
Oh, so I think that started. It's that old.
Yeah, okay. I think that original version of Prey was pretty much just put on the back burner, and then Human Head picked it up at some time in the early 2000s and started working on it. But once we finished Dead Man's Hand, they merged that team into the Prey team. And even then, it was still pretty early, but it always had those kind of the gravity and the portals and all that kind of stuff. Like that was always a part of what I think Human Head's version of it was going to be. The original Prey stuff that 3D Realms did, that was all portals as well.
Right.
I don't know if it had gravity. But we never. I was I wish I could have seen that old Prey stuff from the 90s. Like I think that was all because I remember really being psyched for it since I was such a 3D Realms fanboy all throughout high school.
I don't think anyone's ever mentioned that. That it was a 3D Realms thing beforehand. So that's deep lore.
Yeah, I think the hardcore Prey fanboys would probably know. It looked badass. It was really cool looking, and it would have been fun to at least have seen it at Human Head, but I don't even think they had a build of that. It was just like, nope, just start over.
Yeah. Because I'm a big fan of Doom 3, and it's obviously it's got its flaws, but particularly at the time, I thought it was fantastic, and it's interesting watching. So you go from Doom 3, which is first game in that engine, very tight spaces, trying to show off the lighting and playing, it pulls the player into the detail and makes it very intimate. And particularly some of the first helmet that you go to, and the bricks flying around you and the cages get built around you. It's very very claustrophobic, the game. And then you go to Quake 4, and I was like, okay, what else can we do with this engine? It gets very expansive. You've got armies fighting and big vistas. Still got some pretty tight interior areas, but definitely trying to open up the visuals. But I think with Prey felt like the perfect melding of the two. And it's like when I started playing, I was like, this is the game that a Tech 4 was designed for. And I think it's just a case of the engine being developed and people learning the quirks of it and what its strengths are and its weaknesses. But I was just struck by how well things gel together in Prey. And then there's the non-Euclidean shenanigans, which I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. It was just an incredible experience. I'm really enjoying it.
It's funny. I remember when we started working on, or when I started working on it, when the team transitioned, there was all these rules of don't you dare overlap lights. And because it was just like if you had a shadow casting light and like two of them, like the whole
gotta see the shadow.
just crap out. Like I was like, oh god, don't do it. And then at some point, it was just like, fuck it, do it. And like everyone, and we did. It was just like throw in. I mean, you were supposed to have a very limited set of lights in each space. And if you go into the editor and look at that stuff now, I mean, there is clearly like we're like, nope, don't care. Slap them down and just go nuts.
I approve this design decision. Yeah, more shadows is always good.
But some of those maps working on it, I mean, it's been a long time, but I still remember like there was areas that were. There was something with our version of IdTech at the time that you couldn't highlight like brushes and models and lights and stuff and rotate.
Right.
Because if you did, everything would get off axis. So like the brushes would rotate fine, but then the models would go. And just,
so like the model, because
I
guess the model origin didn't link up with the brush selection origin.
Something was messed up internally that made that impossible. So then there's areas that you're like, well, we're going through a portal and you're supposed to be upside down. So you would think you would just build it and then flip it, or whatever, but you couldn't because flipping didn't work. So you had to build things at weird angles, upside down, sideways, and that is such a mind fuck, right? Just to try to get in there and try to focus on that, because then you look like you're looking at a room from a certain angle, but then the camera is actually straight. It was a mess.
It was good.
It was hard.
That was one of my questions. Like, how hard was it to make things like that? It sounds like quite
very hard. Yeah. And there was a limitation with the portals too, because I was messing around. I jumped back in like last year around this time and started playing with that editor again for Prey, and which is awesome that it's shipped with it and it's all there and you can load up all of those maps and check them out, which is really fun. But there was definitely, I don't remember the limitations of the portals, but now like getting in there and messing with it, it's like they couldn't look at each other.
That's quite
if they did, they would just freak out.
Too many recursions, and you open a portal to the abyss, and the Eye of God stares back at you like, "Ooh, we weren't meant to do that."
And then there was like fade distance on them too, where they would turn black at a certain distance, so you can kind of mess with that. But
yeah, I have noticed that when there's a smooth, like the ones in the boxes, you get close to them, there's a smooth fade. And I actually think instead of it like triggering like a opening like that, it's just this gentle fade. I think it's a really cool effect, but also good for performance because you're not rendering stuff.
I think it was a performance thing, and it was like if there was multiple portals in that space, you had to like fade one off before the other one could be on or something like that. And managing all that was a mess.
I love it when like a technical limitation like there's like how are we going to manage these resources becomes something you can implement a fix for that. Actually becomes a cool visual effect as well. It's like this actually looks really cool because we did something similar for Age of Hell with our portals was like have them turn off when you're a certain distance apart and you can set a render distance, and now we've got this cool like opening effect with them as well. It's like that looks awesome. It's for performance, but it looks awesome too.
I think one of my favorite things about that too is sometimes when the hunters in that game, just the basic fodder enemy with a gun, comes in, it's like he had a little room sitting in every map. Right. And it was like their portal room. And so like when you peek into the portal, you can think, where are they coming from? But it's like that actually is just a space that exists off to the side and just hanging out in there. And
like literally like an old school teleporter closet. Like you're going to sit here until you're needed. You stay there for the next 100 years. This is your lot in life. And then you can pop out and get shot in the
head. They couldn't work on the wall walks when you were upside down and stuff like that. AI couldn't move on them. Because tech navigation is just ground based. There's nothing that says, "Hey, build navigation."
So they stay
on the ceiling or on the walls
because they stay still. I had noticed that. You've lost that pretty well.
If you see a dude teleport in, it's like, man, that's awesome. He's upside down. It's like, he's not moving. He's just gonna stay right there. He's a turret.
Okay, I had not picked that up because I think like when one appears above you like that, you're so disoriented. Like you don't focus on the fact that he's not moving because you're trying to figure out where to shoot. He's over there, you kill him quickly. That's really interesting. Yeah, I guess I imagine the pathing for that I hadn't actually thought about that. Like, how would you path enemies through all that stuff? And the answer is you don't.
I think if there was ever a scene, because I think there are a few where it looks like they are walking on it, it's an animation.
Right,
so it's like they're spawned in and they're totally just animated to like walk down or do something, but it's not actual AI doing it.
Nothing wrong with a little heavy scripting.
That's right.
I've been really impressed with Prey. Well, they have the. I'm assuming you play a fair amount of games, judging by the collection on the shelf there.
Try to.
Yeah, it is hard to find the time. That's for sure. Has there been what's jumped out at you? Like I'd say recently, but in the last kind of 5 or 10 years or something. Is there anything that in particular that's really grabbed you?
Like any game wise?
Yeah,
I'm all over the place with games because it's like there's times where I'll just focus on like RTS games for a long time.
I do love RTS,
and I'll just I'll dive into those. But
Supreme Commander
shooter wise, let's see. Like if I was focusing strictly on like level design, the last game that I was really like, holy shit, these levels are awesome, was a Medieval.
Yep.
Those levels are awesome.
I have probably close to 1,000 screenshots saved now.
They're so much fun to move through, and it's like I could just
beautiful levels.
Just slap on the cheats and just not even pay attention to combat. I just want to play the level. That's all I want to do because they are fantastic and get more unique as the game goes on.
We're talking about you start your journey, the first maps you make, like in a Medieval, you play at the beginning. They're still good looking, but you can feel them experimenting and getting more adventurous as you go through, and then culminating in episode 7, which is still one of the wildest things I've ever seen in a game. That stuff is just ridiculously cool. A Medieval doesn't necessarily have the most engaging, difficult gameplay, but it is because you're there for the visual presentation and the exploration factors, and like you say, you can play it. You can just turn the horses off and just play through it. It's like, I love this. Made by Kiwis too. My fellow countrymen.
Proteus stands out as well. Like Proteus's level design is fantastic.
Yeah, they got some.
I love everything I've played in there so far has been great.
No, it's a lot of good stuff out there at the moment. So one thing that I've noticed with myself is as I've gotten more into actual design and and studying a bit and reading articles and talking to people like yourself, it has changed the way that I think about games when I play them. In terms of you're a bit more analytical and I'm having fun. Why am I having fun? Because not just to pinch ideas and learn, but also it's just the way your brain works change. And I've noticed this with music because I play the drums, and you listen to music differently when you know an instrument. You analyze that instrument a lot heavier. So, is that something that you noticed with yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like I think we've talked about it before in the past of watching movies is just a pain in the ass because you pause them all the time.
How do they do that?
Oh, that's awesome. And if I don't have a way, if I'm not watching it on the computer or something like that, it's get out your phone and just fucking snap a shot of it because it just looks really cool.
It's that's
annoying. And most of the time I don't even do anything with them. I just throw it into a folder and it's at some point I might think that's cool.
I think I've probably used 2% of the photos I've taken from movies to actually turn into something. Yeah, but I have done something.
But games is the exact same. Trying to play through anything, it takes me forever because I usually just have a notebook sitting next to me, and I'll grab any little thing. I can just play it could be a platformer and just do a simple jump, but the way it happened in the game, I thought was amazing. That's fucking cool. I like that. So then get out the book and then sketch what I just did. And have that as an idea that just sits there, and I do that with every game.
Yeah, yep.
So I just have notebooks just filled with just little moments that I thought were really cool, and then going into any level that I work on or whatever, it's usually just dig through the notebook and be like, oh, that was awesome. Yeah, I'll try to work that into this level somewhere.
For sure. And I think it's important to because this is definitely a conversation things I've said in quite a bit over the last year or so is. Don't limit your creativity based on its source. It doesn't matter where you get an idea from. When you start opening your mind up to, this sounds very pretentious, but to being open to ideas from anywhere, be it another game or a movie scene, fuck, that looks like a cool arena, or even just that's a cool pillar. I want to make that pillar. I've got just a lot of my screenshots and photos and stuff that I've saved are actually quite conceptually simple. And it's just what am I going to make in this you're making your level. What am I going to make here? So if I flick through the pillars, I need to make a pillar. We'll make that pillar, and then you can lose yourself in the just recreation of that piece. It doesn't impact gameplay. It's not that important from a progression perspective. You're just making a pillar, and by the time you made the pillar, I like this pillar. I find that my brain has kind of built around it subconsciously. It's like, we can do this with these pillars now. We can put 6 in a ring, and then they're going to turn into this kind of room. I think if you can take ideas from anywhere, you'll never run out.
The best part about that, though, is that the amount of time and thought that went through your brain for that one pillar. Like, this is how it started, and then all the work that went into building it, and then you watch somebody play what you've put out there, and they just walk past it.
It's on screen for 2 seconds, and like...
Yeah, you're like, that was a week's worth of just blood, sweat, and tears, and no one cares. Fuck.
No, that is a thought in the back of my mind, because anyone who knows my work, it does tend to be quite detailed. And it's just like you spend all this time crafting these elements, and people like just walk through it in seconds. It's like, cool, glad you liked it. Yeah. But I had fun making it, so.
Yeah, it's the curse of a level designer. I think that's just what you have to live with.
I think, I did make the effort in Doom Eternal a few times to actually go and stare closely at things like how like all the cracks in the concrete or the little like filigree skulls around a pillar base, and it's like I definitely appreciated those fine touches that were put into that game from that perspective.
That was the painful part of Rage. Actually, was the amount of like detail that was put into stuff. And then once everything was baked down to just a gigantic mega texture, like everything got super blurry.
Looked like soup.
It was just, and it's just so there's so much thought put into like, well, somebody dropped papers here, and there's all this like environmental storytelling that doesn't matter at all, but it's there. But then when you play the game, you look at it, you're like, I don't even know what that is. It's just a blurred mess on the floor.
Fuck mega textures. Ruining people's lives. Yeah. It's a constant battle, I think, as people who do this kind of thing. It's like, I want to put more stuff in there, and people, is it going to notice it? That can you actually see it? Like, I could detail that little balustrade over there that no one's ever going anywhere near, and you can't actually see once I go in the game, and I realize, nope, you can't see what I just made. So I find I do that a little.
The only people that would notice it are like other level designers. They're like, "Damn, look what he did over there! That's awesome!"
Much,
but everybody else playing it, they're like, "Yeah, they're just here to shoot shit."
Yeah, there's multiple markets to tap into there. I think we've probably covered off just about everything I wanted to talk about as far as...
I'm going in.
Yep, that's what I was thinking. I'm sitting here.
I am going into the pickle beer.
Yeah, so
it's just been haunting me.
I've got something different here that I haven't tried before, which is a pink grapefruit hazy IPA.
Oh, man, this does not smell pleasant. Oh.
This is the highlight of the podcast, everyone. JunctionEight trying a, what was it, pickle and
jalapeno.
Jalapeno.
It's called Hell Yeah. The jalapeno pickle fucker. It's not even like good alcohol. It's 3.5%. Like, it's nothing. It's just pickle juice and jalapeno.
That sounds interesting.
Okay, that's not the worst thing ever.
Damn me with faint praise.
Not bad.
Not bad?
All right. I can get behind that. That's heavy on the pickle, though. Oh, there's the jalapeno.
Oh, that's nice.
All right.
But a heat. So there's a little bit of heat in it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's slowly coming in, like at the end. Like, it's just kind of resting on my tongue now.
I think it's like a good chili bean.
It's weird because it smells awful. It smells absolutely awful, but it tastes okay.
I think like a good chili beer, the heat does come through late. You don't want it front of mouth. You don't want it cutting really early because it'll kill all the other flavors. You want it to sneak in after, as a back of the mouth taste. And I think you like it.
I really hate that I like that. Like, I don't want to admit to be like, yeah, there's a pickle beer that's awesome because, but there is. This is worth it.
You're a convert. Look at that.
Yeah,
you found a good one. I do like the experimentation that you get with a lot of craft beers. Like, this might not taste good, this might be garbage, but I'm going to try it because it will be an experience.
Dude, I took my son with me when we went and bought all these a couple days ago, I was like, dude, you can just pick out whatever. I'm down. Like,
Yep.
I will try anything that I haven't had before.
Definitely.
So he picked up, like, there was one, like a gingerbread beer.
Ooh.
There was a lot of just flavored ones that I was like, oh man, I don't know.
I did say you could pick any one, and I'm kind of regretting it.
It's like, this one's got all these different fruits in it. It's like, okay, let's see how it goes.
There's one here that's called Garbage Stout. From one of my favourite breweries, a place called Garage Project down in Wellington, and they really specialise in. Oh, that was the Umami Monster that I was talking about. Yeah, so they made that. So they go for really weird, wild stuff, but they're also very good brewers, so they know if there's something good in there, they can generally extract it and make it enjoyable. But there was one, it's a 14% imperial stout, but they decided to like fill it with comfort food, so it's got like pretzels and chips and raisins and chocolate brownie and maple. It's just the ingredients list is insane. It's like, this shouldn't taste good, and it kind of doesn't, but it's interesting, and it's like, I enjoyed the experience and I kind of want to experience it again.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I would try it.
Oh, yeah, definitely worth trying. And the alcohol percentage helps, because after you've had one, like, I feel pretty good.
I need to track down that taco meat beer I was telling you about and send it to you, because I really want you to try it.
It sounds
like looking at my beer list, and it's like nearly everything. I'm just kind of it's the same with games. I think it's like all media for me. Like, I'm just kind of like always at the even like, yeah, I like everything. I give everything a shot.
Yeah.
That beer is the only beer that I've ever been like, no, fuck you. Like, fuck you. This is a 0.5. You're even lucky you're getting
0.5 out of 100.
This is awful.
The only beers that I think that about are, like shitty beers like fucking Heinekens and those green bottle beers, because they just taste like chemicals in a bottle. It's very. I'm trying to think if there's been like a genuine craft beer that I've had that reaction to, and I don't think so. There's definitely been some that have been like, that's okay. But that one sounds like an experience.
Well, it's funny because I'm looking at on Untapped right now just to see what people are reviewing it, and there's so many like 4 stars kind of thing of just like, this is great. And it's like, what is wrong with you people? No, it's not. It really isn't. This guy can. I'm good with this guy. He says fucking disgusting. Like, yes, thank you.
You're
my friend.
Yeah. We can go sit in the corner and bitch about it. Yeah. It is a good time to be, much like the FPS genre at the moment. It's definitely a good time to be a beer consumer. There's just about every man and his dog brewing something in their backyard or in their garage. I remember there used to be a really cool craft beer place close to home, and I remember a dude who's doing a free tasting session and set up. Literally his first brew. He lived down the road, had made it in his garage, bottled it, taking it out, had them on the shelf. It was his first time, getting them sold, and real nice guy, and had a chat to him and tried it. It was good IPA. And then 3 years later, there's like four of those beers on the shelf, and it's like I was real pleased to see him succeed. Yeah, it was real cool, and it's kind of like you can anyone with a computer can make a game these days, and anyone with a bit of space and a little bit of capital can make a beer, and it's a good thing, I think.
There was a guy when I was in high school, our neighbor. It's like, man, I wish I would have been more into beer back then, or gave a shit, because he had from my parents had described, his whole basement was just decked out, and he just brewed all of his own shit and just walls of stuff that he was trying and all that kind of shit. And it's like, yeah, that's always been in the back of my mind of like, man, I should start playing with that, but I'm so easily distracted with collecting random things. Like, it would be a bad idea, because I would go like hardcore and just get like everything I needed, and then I would stare at it and be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
This looks good on a shelf. We can stay there. Yeah. I did have a mate who dabbled a bit in making some proper beers, and he made a couple of pretty good ones actually. Kind of like slightly unrefined aftertaste, maybe a little bit too bitter, but like you drink it, go, I'll have another. Although his stepdad, he brewed, but he used the Cooper's kits and made some pretty sour 4% portery. Like, this is a beer walked past this. Yeah.
Andrew Hulschild, he came over a couple weeks ago. It was like 3 weeks ago, I think.
Totally not jealous.
He's been doing his own whiskey. Like, he's been aging his own whiskey. And it's so he brought over a bottle of it, and it's funny because I think it had to have gotten stronger just sitting in my fridge, because the night that he was here, we had a cigar and drank some of that, and it was amazing. And it had a nice vanilla hint and everything. Oh my god, it was so good.
Nice.
And let it sit in the fridge for probably 2 weeks, and then I poured a glass, and it was like gasoline. like it was insane. Like I mean, the smell is still there, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I remember how smooth this was, and then one drink, and I'm like, oh my god, my throat.
Oh, wow.
Like, it was, but I mean, it was still like I got plenty fucked up after that. Actually, it was very strong.
Nice. That's because I do like my whiskeys, but I think there's a bit more craft to, and like when if you're making a spirit, like there's such a longer development time to actually get a finished product with beers. You can kind of spit out a few and experiment a bit and find your feet a bit quicker. I think
Right.
distilling sounds like a much longer game to get into. All right, I think it is time for some audience questions. We've got a few lined up here. We'll start with the stuff in the Discord, and then if anyone's got anything else they want to add in via the Twitch chat, if we've got time, we will go there. So, starting off from One Simpletonian, how have your design processes both changed and stayed the same, coming from your first beginnings into your latest work? On the latest major AAA FPS titles like Doom Eternal. Specific emphasis on post-driven workflow and cooperation with an art team versus solo stuff.
It's funny enough that it hasn't really changed. Like making levels for the newer game, like Doom and Doom Eternal and stuff like it, felt exactly like sitting at home making a level when I was in high school. Like it is. The only other side of it, like he mentions there at the end of the question, is it does get handed off. Like you're not responsible for the look of it anymore. It's like you're not building the geometry.
Yep.
Yeah, you're really just sticking with rough shapes. But like a lot of the blockout stuff that I did for 2016 and Eternal, I used classic textures.
Right.
From just like vanilla Doom. I just used that stuff on everything.
Nice.
It was easily identifiable to any artist going in. You could clearly tell what was going to be a door and what, like, if I needed lava on the ground or a hazard, it's like, yep, fuck it, throw down some nukage. That's like, it was,
I love that.
So easy.
That's
to
great.
Use.
That's great.
So there's even like I used a lot of the sprites as well. Actually, like I would, just like dudes hanging from, like all just the body sprites and everything. Like I had that shit everywhere, and they made variants of those sprites as 3D models and just slapped them all over the place. It was really cool.
That's fucking awesome. I love the idea of using classic Doom textures as dev textures for Doom Eternal. I think that's amazing.
There's like I wish I had something to like. I wish I could show it. I don't think I'm allowed to show it. I don't even have anything to show, actually. The that first space in Super Gore Nest, when you walk out and there's like kind of the mini tower and there's cars that are floating above it or whatever. Like in the blockout, that was just it's a cube essentially, but then above it was just kind of like the I don't know the texture name. It's that green texture with kind of the icon of sin on it. Just slapped. It's like a green marble-ish texture.
Oh, Mobface. Yeah, yep.
Classic. That's what was up there. And so there was 4 of those cubes kind of rotating around, and it was meant to be a kind of a blocker. So if you were to jump up there, you'd have to like kind of navigate around those things, or whatever. And then as art comes in and does everything, those just transition to becoming cars.
That's amazing. I love that. So I mean, we did talk about it, but like obviously with your single, if it's just you doing the workflow, you do the block out and then you do the refinement and the detailing and the color. And I guess with a team, it's just you do the block out and then goes on to the next.
It'll go on. It'll go over to the artists. They'll start working on just building everything out and building all the assets and everything like that. And you're still working on like you start shifting into gameplay at that point. Start doing all your combat encounters and things like that. With in mind that you'll have to kind of redo that stuff later when art comes in, because obviously it's going to look completely different than what flat floors and everything are going to show. But there's a lot of cooperation and stuff like that back and forth, because art's going to be like, we don't want to build it like that. Like, that's ugly. You know,
this looks like shit.
They're going to have much cooler ideas, and you're like, yeah, I'm down. So it's just a matter of
I
working
mentioned,
with them.
it is, not so much like I'm done, your job now. It's like, it's more of a transitional period, and then I imagine you get like some like that person you were talking about earlier, end up making Cultist Space, like, oh, I've got this really cool idea for something visual that looks like this, but you're going to have to redesign this area shape-wise for it to work in. Like, what do you think about that? Oh, yeah, no, I think that's a great idea because I can do this with a fight, and this can happen here, and I think that kind of collaborative back and forward is the joy of working in a team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One from Toilet Wine Connoisseur. Fantastic name. What is your the most expensive and the rarest of your big box PC games?
Oh, good lord. The highest price I paid, it's probably, I think I paid like 400 or 500, which is insane because I would never do that again, for the Ultima Online Charter Edition box, because I was huge into Ultima Online back in the day.
An RPG nerd, nice.
And I mean, it's a massive box. It's actually, hold on, it's just sitting over here. I'll show you. Oh, it's a beast.
Yeah, I never played Ultima Online too much. Well, that's amazing.
Awesome.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah. that is beautiful.
And it's got like all the cloth maps and stuff on the inside, and yeah, that thing's cool. The rarest one though, I don't really know off the top of my head. Like, I've got a copy of Loom, old school adventure game. That thing's sealed. I think that's pretty rare. But yeah, I'm not that's probably what I'd go with, is that, or even like the whole unit blood pack with all with blood and all of its expansions.
Nice.
That one's pretty rare too. I wish I had the Id anthology. Like, I have pieces of it. I had it in high school.
Right.
And I mean, in high school, I had the Icon of Sin that's on that box. I had actually painted it on my wall.
Oh, wow.
I wish I had I think I do have a photo of it somewhere. But that was just slammed up on the wall. And then, I mean, I would always listen to like the Quake 1 soundtrack was on loop. And my mom thought something was wrong with me because there's just like this huge demon on the wall, and I'm just listening to Quake.
Yeah, very good. And that ties into nicely to the next question, which is from Majestic Khaled. What does it feel like to be a collector? Yeah. Looks pretty good. Looks like a good thing to do.
Yeah, like it's fun, but then it's overwhelming because you don't know when to stop. At least I don't. Like, I have no room for anything anymore. Like, there's just shit piled up everywhere, and it's ridiculous and starting to look like a hoarder.
Yeah, that line, there's that line that you don't want to cross.
Yeah, and it's like, once I run out of shelf space, it's great. But like, if I come across something, I feel like I need to get it. But I mean, I started collecting just because I wanted to get all the stuff that I remembered from my childhood. And like all the games that were important to me, and started there. And then it just evolved into like, well, that guy's selling a box of big box games.
Stuff I would like. There might be something cool in there. I better go buy it.
Right. Yeah. And it's just kind of evolved. And it spreads beyond big box. There's console shit in the other room that is just like, I almost have a full N64 collection.
Nice.
Just all this stuff that it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it in the end. It's just sitting there. Like, I don't know.
So this one's from Zenero. I quite like this one, actually. If you were sent two-parter, or a good caveat. So if you were to send a message back in time to yourself at the start of your career, would you take the opportunity to send that message in order to avoid, making certain mistakes, or to get around roadblocks, essentially to help you pass yourself through some of the tougher moments? Or do you view overcoming those elements as actually a part of, an integral part of the experience to become a better designer?
I think it's part of the experience, definitely. You have to have those like pitfalls in order to get better. Like you have to fail.
Yep.
You have to work on stuff that doesn't do well. The only thing I'd probably tell my younger self would be just to start developing thick skin.
Yeah.
Because you need it, man. Like it's just when you spend like in any modern game, I mean, you're spending 3 years, 4 years of your life just living and breathing that thing.
Yeah.
And once you release it and start seeing posts, it's like either don't read the internet at that point, or if you do, just don't let it upset you. Like because there's so everyone's got an opinion, and everyone's valid in whatever they feel like they need to talk about. So it's fine.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
It does suck because it feels like it's your baby, and someone can be bad mouthing your baby.
Yeah, for sure. It's I think anyone in a creative field needs to develop a certain degree of personal armor to bat that kind of shit away. And but you also do need to listen to legitimate criticisms, you know.
Absolutely.
If it's couched in nasty language, well, those people can get fucked, to be honest. But there's nothing's perfect, and like you say, going back to that, learning from these people might be presenting legitimate things that you can improve on next time and become better. And I definitely agree that it's important to go through those ups and downs because you learn more by failing.
Absolutely,
than you do by succeeding. It's like, I did good. I'll do it again. Nothing changes. But if you make something doesn't quite work out right, or it's not fun to play, or there's things you could do better next time. Well, that's how you improve. And
yep, absolutely,
very much agree. One from Arlene. I see a post about all kinds of great and fantastic classics from all types of media: Dune, Heretic, and Evil Dead. As of late on your Twitter, where do you draw the most inspiration from for level design? Is it all the great media in your collection, or from elsewhere?
It's kind of what we talked about earlier. Actually, it's from everywhere. It doesn't matter what you're doing or what you're playing, what you're watching, even what you're listening to. All of that stuff just feeds into ideas.
Yep.
And I mean, it works for me to have the notebook with me at all times, just because, I mean, you could be out. I mean, it's nice that we have phones now to take photos of shit. But you could be out anywhere and just look at a building that looks cool, or the interior of some space, and you're like, that's fucking awesome, and snap a shot of it.
Definitely.
Everything feeds into just creativity. You can steal it from anything.
Exactly.
Essentially, it's just like, it's all
borrow. Loan the idea, and I'll give it back. I promise. You can have it, but I just need to keep it for a little bit. Just put it in my pocket. It's funny you mentioned music because you wouldn't expect that to be like a source of inspiration for level design or a game, but I've done that. Like been listening to songs, but this seems to happen a lot at the gym, and I'll be on the cardio machine and listening to some music, and the lyrics will just start a ball rolling, and I'm like, I have to write this down. You can literally get ideas from absolutely anywhere. But we did go through that a bit more detail earlier, and we've got one from Blue to Beast. This is for both of us. Do you feel that level design plays a key part in multiplayer immersion in a way that it keeps players coming back and wanting more? Actually, have you been involved in any multiplayer level design?
I have. It's definitely not my focus. Like I am a single player guy, tried and true. But I have done some multiplayer maps. I don't even know the last time I did one. Probably on stuff that no one played multiplayer in, so no one would ever see them. But the level has to be good for you to come in. If the level sucks, you're not going to want to play the game anymore. Like if you flow through the space, and if there's too many holes, you could almost look at any arena in both 2016 or Eternal. They're multiplayer arenas, really. Like that's what it comes down to.
You could easily put 5 or 6 players in there and have a pretty good deathmatch.
Right. You're getting jump pads, you're getting all that shit. So like it's pretty close to a multiplayer map.
Yeah.
But those are a different breed. To get one that's just really good and memorable, and it's crazy to see the ones that are memorable from people who still play Quake and things like that, and what stands out as their favorites, because there's clearly something about certain maps, and it's hard to pinpoint what it is that just brings people back in.
I think with deathmatch, and everything's important and always important and shouldn't be neglected. But in deathmatch in particular, the focus, like you said, flow and a a single player game or map or whatever that doesn't play perfectly and maybe isn't the best gameplay can be lifted by other elements, be it visual presentation and aesthetics, like a medieval. Like you say, you can play that with no monsters and it still be enjoyable. Deathmatch less so. It's not about, like, because it's so fast paced, you're not really paying attention. It needs to look decent, but if the gameplay's lopsided, like there's places people can camp and just kill everyone, or the flow's not there and you get stuck into corners and also dead ends you have to turn around from, and too many doors, and a deathmatch map that plays badly is just no one's going to use it.
Right.
Yeah. So
well, if you take that too and you put that into single player, like for single player, you could always patch those holes very easily.
Yep.
With just some random thing of like, oh, we notice players are standing in this corner and they're just exploiting all the combat. And you're like, well, guess what? We're gonna
paint sector.
Put a little portal thing here that blocks you from there. Like you could easily just prevent somebody from getting there. In multiplayer,
we'll just make it kill you. Exactly. Yeah, you have got to get that flow, and
it's got to be so polished and tested like crazy in order for it to be perfect.
Yeah. No, it's actually something I do want to try and do is run a little community project around making deathmatch maps, because I think it'd be quite fun, but it would definitely be different. Definitely be a different experience. Oh, there's an interesting question from the Mr. Cat, who's actually been lurking in the chat with us. He is actually one of the principal developers working with me on Age of Hell, so very good dude. Do you think that Carmack and Romero would have been as successful and innovative if they had never worked together?
Good question. I think so. They both had the drive back then. It would have been interesting to see what they would have made if not together. Like what kind of games would have come out from either of them.
Because Carmack was always about the tech behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
That was always his passion. So I imagine he would have gotten into something. It might not have been games though. I could easily have seen him ending up in a different industry. Because does he doing VR work now, like for Oculus? Maybe.
I think he stopped doing that actually.
He was.
I think he's consulting for Oculus, and now he's like working on AI or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so
making Skynet. Or
exactly.
Like
it's got Terminator will be him. So Carmack I can see easily ending up in a different industry completely. So, but with Romero, it's definitely like he is more game focused. Like he would have made games. If Carmack wasn't there, Doom would have happened. I feel like I could be completely wrong. I'll get to ask him in a couple of weeks. Actually, that is a good question to.
I'd say Doom would have happened, but it probably wouldn't have been a first-person shooter. Because he wouldn't have had the tech.
That's true. Yep.
To kind of push it forward and do all that. Like it could have just been another. I mean, even Commander Keen wouldn't have been Commander Keen without Carmack, because he didn't have the tech to get side-scrolling to work on a PC. So it would have been interesting to see what type of games Romero would have made without Carmack's tech.
Yeah, I could see him making RPGs for some reason.
Right. Yeah.
which are less tech reliant. Those old ones are they're just text on a screen. I could see Romero making RPGs for some reason. And one from Chester. What stands out as the most painstaking areas you've created in a Doom Eternal level that most players probably will never notice?
It's that big. The hardest place was, and this is more of a performance question than anything else, is that outdoor area of Super Gornest. That area is huge.
It's massive.
And you can see everything. Like there's nothing that blocks you from seeing into other spaces. It's very porous. You could see multiple levels, and once that thing gets detailed out by the art team, it's a lot of polygons. It's a lot of stuff going on. So there is a lot of kind of hackery happening in the background when you're depending on where you're standing, things are being turned off and managed, and models are being hidden, and stuff is just being kind of swapped around behind the scenes so that space can actually run decently.
Yeah, and because like that outdoor area is also very high encounters. Like there's a lot of action in there. You can afford to have like a little bit of performance drops in places where not much combat is happening. But like in an area like that where players are spinning and jumping and running around so much, if you get any frame drops, people are gonna comment.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even like thinking of, and this would be a game wide thing, the meat hook, like that. that broke so much shit because it's, especially when you see how people use it. Like that was never like, I mean, I never thought of it as a designer to watch somebody fling themselves
I've seen some
far as
wild
people.
shit.
It's insane. So there is so much of like, holy shit! Like, how do we?
You can't just put block lines around everything.
Yeah, in some cases that is what you have to do. It's like I'm sorry, like I don't want to place an invisible wall here, but I have to because
you keep yeeting yourself into the sun.
Things.
Oh, like not just from a there's obviously the level breaking element. Actually, let's talk about the meat hook for a while because it's a fucking seminal, piece of a kit in the game. And so, like, there's the you can get to areas that you aren't meant to with the meat hook. I think that was probably semi-inevitable. And like, hey, if you do something weird and you break the game, well, that happens. And you do try and eliminate the 99% of the cases where that happens. But if there's the odd out of bounds glitch that can happen accidentally, it's not not necessarily the end of the world. And then if it happens quite often, well, no, we need to fix that one. But for me, the most interesting thing about the meat hook is how it's used in combat. And the amount of mobility that people can get from it, and how far that's taken the skill ceiling for Doom Eternal.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that wasn't something that was really thought about?
I don't think so. Like, I mean, not to the extent that it's used now. I mean, Hugo's so active with that community now for especially for like those pro Doom Eternal players that are just nuts to watch. Like, it's in the back of the mind of everyone now. Like, so as things are being worked on, it's like, okay, there's guys that play the game like this. So it's totally, everything's built around that at this point.
Well, now you actually see in Tag 2, there's those meat hook points.
Yeah.
So it's actually like, we're going to actually teach, we're going to kind of almost tutorial people who, because I hadn't really done much meat hooking until that point. Like, certainly not from a combat perspective. Because I'm not that good. But it's interesting seeing that folding into deliberate design now, and I really like that. I like that, almost backwards kind of design feedback coming in. It's like well, not so much backwards, but going full circle. We make a thing, the players do this. Well, they get quite good at that. That looks like fun. Let's bring that in for the next iteration. I think that's it shows a dev team that's really paying attention to how people are playing and respecting that and go, these are good ideas. And then you get I'm assuming you've heard of Proti and his mods.
Oh,
the Horde mode.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Dude, it's fucking awesome. I'm glad that somebody found a way to mod the game. Like that is so awesome.
So cool.
Like I would love tools to come out in the future for anything more that id works on. Like releasing a tool set would be fucking great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that people have worked around on Eternal to get that stuff to work, but it's given more life to the game. I mean, it's just the
100%.
same reason why classic Doom stuff is still around. It's just the more the community can build shit, the longer your game will live.
Oh, definitely, 100%. It's why games last as long as they do is a very strong modding community. And I just want to see more stuff in Tech 7, and I think if the team can actually produce some sort of SDK, Doom Eternal will be played for many, many years. But it's insane watching people like Devo play Prote's Horde modes and just bossing these areas. Like, how do you move like that?
There's such a great thing of like seeing what people, especially because it's just PC stuff. So it's like there's no limitations. Just go nuts. It's like when you're working on the game as a shippable product, you have to keep performance in mind. It's going to be on consoles. It's going to be everywhere. So you can't just go nuts. There is a limitation, especially for AI. It's like you can only have this many alive at a certain time, before things start getting bad. So to see somebody just make
fuck the limits.
We're going to throw 15 Marauders in this room. You're like, oh fuck, that's awesome.
Cool. I'm going to watch someone else play it. Grab a whiskey. Yeah. Like that, and that's where you do get that boundary pushing, and you look at stuff that's been made for GZ Doom and Quake, like Arcane Dimension stuff, and people like pushing those boundaries out, and like sure, not everyone can play them because maybe they don't have a good enough rig, or they're not good enough to play like skill level wise because these people like to push difficulty as well. But it's fantastic to watch, and it keeps those people who are very good at the game and play it a lot. It keeps them interested, and it's good publicity and all those things. I think we had. I think we had any more. I had one more that I wanted to ask, and then if there's no more from the audience, we'll call it a day. There's a couple of fights in particularly Tag 1 which felt like they're just transposed from a classic Doom custom mod setup. There's one where you got to fight a bunch of pinkies and there's a whole lot of blood punch charges around, and then there's the plasma rifle and the shield guys, and then there's the Marauder with the totem. We got to kill the Marauder first before you can access the totem, and there are a couple other ones as well. But there's certain encounters that felt like they were just pulled straight from someone's Doom mod that they made a couple of years ago, kind of thing. Like a really gimmick sounds bad, but it focused around a certain gimmick, and with a really clear strategy. Are those inspired by classic Doom, or is it just you guys branching out and experimenting more? Or
yeah, it was more about experimenting. It was about trying to give the player a moment where it's easily winnable. It's just a thing where you could feel like a badass because you are getting beat down a lot, especially in Tag 1. So to have those moments where it's no, just fucking have fun. Here's a bunch of pickups, or here's a bunch of ammo. Just go nuts. You're gonna fight only things that are weak to the plasma rifle, and you just tear into it. And then by the time that's done, you're like, this is awesome. But then of course you go right into the boss fight after that. And you're like, oh, I'm not awesome.
No. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting because it just to me and probably because that's what I do, but it just screamed this could be in a Doom, a classic Doom map. And I really liked it. I thought it was just give that a tick because like you say, they're fun. You enjoy them, and then get your dick handed back to you on a plate. No, very good. How's the pickle beer holding up?
It's gone.
It's gone?
So,
yeah.
Right.
Can't be too bad then.
Pickle beer, A-OK. Everyone try it.
All right, there we go. Full endorsement from JunctionEight for the pickle and jalapeno.
Hell yeah. Jalapeno pickle fucker. Get it.
That's a hell of a name. Oh yeah, we've got one last question just popped up. Any levels they made? You made? I guess you. Any levels that you've made that you look back on and you think, why did I do that?
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
There's so much of that.
That was a dumb
idea.
Bad
idea.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common.
Yeah. There's you could iterate on a level forever and keep churning, and probably what you had there originally was likely the better thing, but you can get in your own head and redesign an area, or just constantly move things around, and
definitely.
Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head of any spot that I'd really
I think in that kind of situation, really. And this ties back to the failing and roadblocks and all that kind of struggles that you have. You look back on that and that didn't work out so well, as you figure out why. And you need to draw a line in the sand when you work on something that you throw good money after bad. There's no point trying to rework this area. As you say, the original idea is probably as good as it's going to get because there's something fundamentally flawed in the design.
Right.
Fuck it. Release it. Do whatever you need to get it out there, and that's probably a little bit easier for your passion modders. But if it's a AAA game, probably cut that out and build something again from scratch. If you want to read, because it takes, like you said with the Foundry, there's a time and an energy cost to reworking this stuff. And sometimes it works, like the Foundry. But I imagine that was a pretty risky moment, to be honest, to have that amount of redesign going into a map that late in the piece.
It definitely was. It was more of hey, take 2 weeks and try to figure it out, and if it doesn't work, it stays the same kind of thing.
Yeah. So,
actually, I could say the one thing I would look back on and be like, fucking hell, is all those classic maps in 2016. That was such a last minute thing, and to sign up for that, because I made every one of those.
Oh wow!
And what a pain in the ass, and it was nothing but just people's reaction. It was cool that they were there. I liked that they were there.
I like,
it was
yeah,
fun to do.
I like that they existed. They weren't necessarily the funnest to play, but I could understand
Oh
why.
fuck no, they weren't. Like no, they were the AI from that game do not belong in those maps at all. But it was a fun experience to try to do because I mean, really, I think the first 2 maps or first 3 I had to build completely from scratch.
Yep.
So it was really just like kind of eyeballing everything and just building in there. And then we had some exporter at some point that was made in Python to spit it out. And the texture coordinates were all fucked up. So that's why it's like, you have the people, it's like all the flip textures and things like that. It's like, I'm sorry. They're like, oh my God.
You make it!
There's so many maps to keep an eye on. And it was in like 3 weeks or something to get them all done.
I didn't realize they were that late in the piece.
And then, of course, after all said and done, I think somebody online had pointed out and said, "Oh, you could just export them from I forget what editor."
Well, Ultimate Doom Builder, you can export them as a model. Yep.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, you could have just exported it, and it would have kept the texture coordinates." It's like, well, I didn't know that. That would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah, and that was one of the great things about Doom 16 was all those little homages and references to the. To the old stuff, and I did love that they were there, and I appreciate the effort, and I think the community does too.
Yeah. I think I liked hiding them more in the maps, than actually playing the full map. Yeah. It could have just stayed as the hidden pieces. And called it a day.
Probably could have.
Oh well.
Yeah. Probably, that probably would have been enough of a reference to make people go, yes, and get all that nostalgia, dopamine.
I remember this.
No, they were great. Yeah, and I love the jarring transition between the beauty of modern Doom 16 to like back to the original textures all pixelated and their glory, fire blue.
That's what kind of sold actually, because the first one was done that was in Foundry.
Yep.
And that was the transition that was like, oh my God, this is really cool because it's like you're out there in the lava and everything's going nuts, and then you just walk in.
It's just right there,
old pixelated.
Starting.
Like holy shit. I mean, it's funny. There was. And I never got around to actually being able to do it, but we could have shaded all of those textures and gotten the lighting to be like it was in the classic maps. Because right now they're just full bright.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no shading at all. But the ability was there to shade them properly, but it would have taken all the time to go in there and cut the meshes all because they're all models. To cut them up into all the pieces they need and then try to find the accurate shading on all that. And so, that wasn't worth the effort.
It's something that I always find quite fascinating is like, obviously these new engines and stuff are very powerful. You can make amazing, elaborate constructs, but like trying to recreate old stuff in the new engines, like, fuck, this is hard.
Yeah.
Because it has to be a model.
The first ones I had done were in Rage.
I
had done the Wolfenstein Secret and Rage, and then I did a little brief E1M1 section in one of the maps, and then a Quake section. And so that was kind of the first experience of going back and just kind of recreating some of the classic things. And then 2016 was like, no, just make the full map now. It's like, oh, yeah.
Really? Okay, we're doing this now. Yeah. Very good. All right, I think, that's it from there. If anyone else has a question, drop it in the next 30 seconds and we'll ask it, but otherwise we'll call it a day. Thank you very much, JunctionEight, for coming on. I don't know if you usually do this kind of stuff, but it was a pleasure.
No. This is the first time I've ever actually done anything like this, so thanks for having me.
No, it was great. And awesome. I think I'd be keen to get you back on and we can pick your brain a bit more. Drink a few more beers. And probably deep dive a bit more into level design properly. Now that we know a bit of your history, got anything else you want to add? Anything you want to say to the adoring Doom fans out there?
Nothing. I love you all.
There we go. Perfect.
That's all I got.
Plucking up to Doom.
Oh, I don't have one.
It doesn't have.
I've got like a drop of pickle left, so there we go.
No, I mean, Doom is whether you like it or don't, it is part of the architecture in FPS, and it's come a long way over the last 26 and a half years or whatever it is, nearly 27, and someone like yourself working for ID for that long. Definitely a big part of what it is today. So on behalf of all the people out there that play it, we appreciate your efforts, and you look at the stuff you've made, and I think you can feel very proud of yourself and what you've achieved because people like it. It's good fun.
Thank you very much. It's nice to hear.
Yep. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll of course be back in a month's time or so. Got a few more guests lined up. Something very exciting coming up soon in July. And until then, you've been here with Bridgeburner and JunctionEight, and we will catch you next time.
Bye, guys.
All right. Done. All right. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thanks, dude.
We are going to continue streaming. We're going to play some Doom and do the usual co-op thing. You have a good one, JunctionEight. You go cook your dinner.
Yes. I don't even know what's on the menu. Go find out.
Hopefully we didn't keep you too long.
But, thanks.
No, cheers.
Hey, it's your friendly neighborhood producer, Ty the Motherlode Brandon speaking here. It was an absolute pleasure to do this one, and I want to say thank you to Bridgeburner and also to JunctionEight for yet another fantastic interview. Make sure you go follow them at all of their places on Twitter, follow Bridgeburner on Twitch, and also on his YouTube channel and all the different places where you can get this podcast. If you don't know where to find those things, inthekeep.com. Click on the podcast tab, and Burning Bridges is right there. You can also check out all of our other fantastic shows like In the Keep and Doom is Dead. Stay hard, motherfuckers.